It happened! I said it would happen. I was a little off on the timing, but it happened! Dr. Hoff came through in completing the trifecta of evil! Oh boy! I can't wait to find out how inherently flawed I am! Again!
Welcome to The Radical Therapist. This is your host, Dr. Chris Hoff.
What's up, Doc?
And today we are out and about in Washington, D.C., and behind me there is the Smithsonian Museum of African American History and Culture. And I'm about to go in there and I'm going to take you with me. But before we do that, I thought this would be a good opportunity to talk about a couple of topics that I'll probably cover on the show more than once. And that is today, white fragility and then white privilege. Controversial, I know. So bear with me.
Controversial? Oh, not at all, Doctor. White fragility and white privilege are generally accepted concepts in both academia and the mainstream media. I mean, attributing psychological flaws and societal value to people based on their skin color? Nonsense. This isn't a new idea at all. It even has its own word in the dictionary.
But I thought we could start by talking, before we go into the museum, about white fragility, because I think it's an important topic, because if we're going to make any progress and kind of undoing systems of oppression in our country, white people are going to have to thicken up a little bit. And what I mean by that, they're just going to have to be expand their tolerance and ability to sit in uncomfortable conversations. And that it means taking on what is being called now white fragility. I know that's not going to go over well with people, I understand, but it's important.
You seem awfully sure that your opinions are going to be harshly criticized, Doctor. Tell me, are you experiencing white fragility right now?
And so, what is white fragility? White fragility is a term created by Dr. Robin DiAngelo, and she stated that white people in North America live in social environments that protect them from race-based stress. White people, or white fragility, is a state in which a minimum amount of racial stress becomes intolerable, triggering a range of defensive moves by white people.
So, white people need to toughen up. They have this fragility because they do not have to deal with racial stress. So, the solution to this would be to increase racial stress on white people? That will make them better people? So, scrutinizing people on the basis of their skin color is a good thing? Wow, I'm not even at the Smithsonian, and already I feel enlightened.
So, I'm going to share a little bit about what those moves are, because we need to be aware of them when we're having these difficult conversations and these things start to happen. So what are these moves, these defensive moves that we do when we're experiencing race-based stress? First, I'm going to talk about changing the subject. Oftentimes, when these subjects come up, when we're talking about, say, unarmed black men getting killed by police, or what's going down, the protests in Ferguson or something like that. Oftentimes people want to change the subject to something more positive, something more not so negative is how it gets characterized. And that is a defensive move, would be considered a defensive move to changing the subject.
You're exactly right. That is a familiar strategy, taking something awful and trying to sugarcoat it, trying to soften the rough edges, make apologies for it like, I don't know, characterizing the Ferguson riots as simply a protest. Wait, didn't you just call the riots a protest?
Calling all race talk negative, and what we need to do is be able to be comfortable in having those conversations.
Then why do you keep tempering your words with admissions of being controversial? Why are you uncomfortable with talking about race issues?
Another defensive move, and I think this is really an important one, and one that I have wrestled with in my own life, and that is the ability, or this defensive move of being able to leave the conversation. You know, I've come to the realization that me as a white male, oftentimes I don't have to participate in these difficult conversations if I don't want to, whereas people of color don't have that option. They don't have that privilege.
So, black people have no choice but to talk about race. Can't they just not talk about it? I mean, is there something inherent to white skin that imbues those people with the power of choice? Is there something inherent about black skin that denies someone the ability to choose? That sounds kind of racist.
So my task at hand is to realize that conversations about race and oppression are hard, and that I need to be in the midst of that, in that difficulty, and be uncomfortable, be okay with being uncomfortable, be okay with getting called out, be okay with when I make a mistake in language, click right, or whatever, be okay and not let it crumble me in a way that I leave the conversation, but that I just correct and keep moving forward. Third one is getting defensive or angry. And how this works is I heard somebody say recently the worst thing you could call a white liberal left person is a racist, and which is probably true. Nobody likes to be called a racist.
You're quite correct, Doctor. No one likes being called a racist. But if you're demonizing people based solely on their skin color, you should not be surprised when it happens to you.
And what that does is it prohibits people from examining their own racism, which I think is really, really important and not a bad thing, right?
Not calling people racist prohibits them from examining their own racism. Well, I guess if you proceed under the belief that all white people are inherently racist, then yes, you would be morally justified in calling them racists, most especially when they say they're not, because they obviously are, and they need to acknowledge it, because intimidating others into admitting their inborn guilt proves the cleanliness of your own soul, after all.
This is how we got to make it visible, be aware of it, and then we don't reproduce it in the ways that we reproduce it. So oftentimes you'll hear people say when they're getting defensive or angry, I've had it hard too. I'm a white person. I didn't come up, and it would be easy for me to do that. I'm actually, well, you probably don't know, I've had a history of kind of somewhat juvenile delinquency. I was a high school dropout. It would be easy for me to say, hey, I haven't had it so easy either. But the reality is that I have access to, well, you don't have to be a racist to benefit from racism, right?
You don't have to be a racist to benefit from racism. So, not all white people are racist, but they're still culpable for racism by unwittingly benefiting from it. Even if you had nothing to do with the bad actions or motivations of others, you share in the responsibility for their misdeeds. Like, I don't know, Eve eating from the tree of knowledge? Got it.
And so another way you could call these other people that are calling you out as being unreasonable. You can make the argument that why is everything about race? Some of these things are the way that we be defensive. And finally, the last kind of defensive move that I want to talk about is the idea of getting lost in white guilt or getting lost in your whiteness. And being rendered ineffectual. I think guilt isn't going to do anybody any good here. It's not worthwhile. It'll just continue to keep these systems of oppression in place. It's not going to help anybody, yourself included. So abandon the guilt. Not worthwhile. And that's not what we're not trying to do here. We're not trying to blame or shame anybody into action. This is about just becoming aware, being okay with being uncomfortable, and staying in the midst of these difficult conversations as we move to undo systemic racism, oppression, etc. So,
no, you're not trying to make people feel guilty for being the beneficiaries of racism. You're not trying to make them feel self-conscious for supposedly having an advantage over everyone else based solely on the color of their skin. You're not trying to blame or shame anyone into action. You just want white people to feel uncomfortable and remain having these conversations even if they don't want to. You need them to understand that, even if they're not racist, their skin color still provides them the advantages of racism. You're coming through loud and clear, Doctor. Clear as scuffed crystal.
Anyway, that's my quick pitch on white fragility. Probably not the last time. And let's go into the museum. All right.
What follows over the next 6 minutes is footage from inside the museum set to dramatic music. There is no commentary from Dr. Hoff during this time, so I am going to jump ahead to when he next speaks. If you would like to see this video in its entirety, a link is in the description below.
I thought I'd finish off this video doing a quick little pitch on white privilege with the Lincoln Memorial in the background. So for those that don't know, white privilege was a term coined by Wellesley professor Peggy McIntosh, which refers to certain unearned benefits or certain unearned privileges in life that people of color are not afforded.
Peggy McIntosh, author of The Invisible Knapsack, a list of inherent advantages that white people possess in life. At least, those they can be pretty sure or pretty well assured that they have these benefits most of the time, and that some things are just absolute truths. My favorite is number 46, that assures me that Band-Aids are colored more or less to match my flesh tone. Yeah, look at that. Totally invisible.
An example of this might be, I just read this morning a study in the Bureau of Labor Statistics that a black college student has the same chance of getting a job as a white high school dropout. That could be considered a particular case of white privilege. As a high school dropout, you have an equal chance of getting a job as a black college student.
You just read this? Because that comparison was made back in 2014. But maybe the numbers have remained steady. Well, what are the factors involved? And is there any positive news from those same statistics? The study attributes the employment gap mainly to hiring discrimination, high incarceration rates for black people, and African Americans' lack of inherited wealth from past generations due to a long history of discrimination. Less inherited wealth results in low homeownership rates and high deficits among African Americans, while a college-educated white American has an average net worth of $75,000, a college-educated black American has a net worth of less than $17,500. But according to Rory O'Sullivan, Young Invincible's deputy director, there's some good news. According to the study, even though unemployment is higher among African Americans at every level of education, the added gains in income and employment opportunities gained from an additional degree is much greater for African Americans than whites. For example, a professional degree gives a black male a 146% larger increase in employment opportunities than his white counterparts. A bachelor's degree raises the median wage of a black man by $10,000 per year compared to a raise of $6,100 per year for a white man. So, a black male with a higher education has a 146% better chance at job opportunities than a white man. Tell me, Dr. Hoff, why would systemic oppression allow such a thing to occur?
But if you want to know more about white privilege and how that really looks, I recommend Peggy McIntosh's book, White Privilege, and she has a section on unpacking the knapsack of privilege.
I beat you to it, Doc. It is a long list of assumptions, hypotheticals, and weasel words attributing vast powers of influence and immunities to white people with the implicit message that non-white people possess the disability of their skin color. Real classy.
And it can give you a lot of other different ways that this shows up. So now I know there's a lot of controversy around this topic. A lot of people think privilege doesn't exist, that it's just an ideology, that it just isn't out there. Or a lot of what's happening now is people are pointing to white rural America and saying, see, you have large population of white people that are experiencing hardship, and so white privilege doesn't really exist.
You're right. A lot of people don't believe it. But since you do believe in it, then I must assume that your career, financial situation, and status in your community was just handed to you. You put no effort towards earning it at all. You were afforded these things solely on the basis of your race. That being the case, why should anyone trust you when you say that you are an accredited therapist?
But I would say to these folks that, these things that are happening in white rural communities like drug addiction, unemployment, poverty, have been happening in black communities for years, since forever, really. So I just don't think it measures up. So
you don't think it measures up? That's your response. That white people can also experience drug addiction and poverty and hardship just as black people can, just as people can in general, that just does not measure up as an argument against white privilege. Why not?
For those that would say that white privilege or white supremacy does not exist, I'm going to reference one of my favorite philosophers, Bruno Latour, who said, what is real resists. And this is why I don't believe it to be an ideology at all, because what is real resists, and you just look for this resistance.
What is real resists. So, if I am falsely accused of murder, my protestations of innocence would tend to prove the truth of my guilt. Got it.
And we can find it today in all its full glory in the Great America, Make America Great Again movement, which I don't know when America was great. I don't know if they're asking us flat point blank to just roll back civil rights, to roll back LGBTQ rights, to roll back women's rights. I'm not sure what they're asking for. Well, I have an idea. I'm just playing kind of dumb, but
it kept sounding like he was saying roll black rather than roll back. Freudian slip, maybe? Anyway, when was America ever great? Doctor, you are standing on it. In the capital of a nation that long ago profited off the backs of black slaves, you just walked out of a museum celebrating the contributions of black people towards the betterment and enrichment of that same country. You flew from your home in California to Washington, D.C. in a conveyance invented in America. Your video is being showcased to the world on YouTube, a company and technology developed in America. Maybe you are blind to your privilege. Your American privilege.
You see it in the anti-social justice movement. I've been accused recently of being a social justice warrior, which is okay by me. I don't know what the alternative is, but you see it in this movement, and people that say there is no privilege feeling threatened, that something might be taken away. I don't get that really.
Doctor, social justice and political correctness promotes a philosophy of oppressing speech and ideas that run counter to what it deems is appropriate, respectful, and correct. It is as moralizing a movement as the conservative Christians of the 1990s ever were. And I am not worried about losing any privileges. What I am concerned with is the deterioration of people's right to free speech and free expression. Words and ideas are being policed, restricted, and prevented from being expressed, Doctor. Whether they are bad ideas, good ideas, or just ideas meant to challenge the status quo as humor or critique. So when you promote the notion that white people becoming defensive over being called racist is therefore proof of their unacknowledged racism, that what is real resists, you are attempting to devalue and delegitimize anyone who might disagree with you who is of the incorrect skin color. Think about what you are saying, Doctor. I know you are smarter than this.
But I would say that if this anti-social justice movement, who are they trying to silence, right? who are they trying to silence? I mean, look to that, and that's where you might find some resistance. And I would say to them also, there's a favorite meme of mine going around that says, when you're accustomed to privilege, equality feels like oppression. And I think that's what's happening to some of these, like the men's rights groups, the the people that would call me a snowflake. I think in reality they're really struggling with this sense of when you're used to privilege, equality feels like oppression. So,
I am not trying to silence you, Doctor. I am, in fact, rebroadcasting you to many people who might not otherwise watch your videos, adding my own thoughts and reactions to the mix. And those watching are free to agree or disagree with me, as well as with you. And I am glad to have that discussion and debate. I value my right to do so. And if I am shown to be wrong about something, or have a misinformed perspective, I am happy to be corrected. I do not think of myself as infallible, and while I am only human, I do my best to allow for the possibility that even if I vehemently disagree with someone on several points, they may still have arguments or perspective with which I can agree, or can at least learn from. So, Doctor, in all honesty, can you entertain the possibility that some of what you propose might be, in itself, racially inflammatory at worst, or counterproductive at the very best?
You can also see it in the continued criminalization, or you can see this resistance in the continued criminalization of people of color, be it the war on immigration.
It is not a war on immigration. It is a step up on the existing laws regarding people who are in this country illegally. And being here illegally is not a matter of race, but a matter of law.
The Muslim ban?
It is not a Muslim ban. Trump was an idiot in his rhetoric on the campaign trail, but the policy actually put into action does not ban Muslims, but rather travel to the U.S. from a short list of countries. If it was a Muslim ban, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Singapore and a dozen other countries would also be on that list. Now, I don't personally agree with the travel ban. I think it is ultimately unproductive, diplomatically damaging, and penalizes innocent people. But let's be honest about what it is and what it is not.
Now the federal government making noises about undoing legalization of marijuana. We know what happened last time with the mass incarceration of people of color.
Marijuana never stopped being illegal on a federal level. The Obama administration just chose to not spend any money on enforcing the law, thus effectively ignoring its violation. Federal law supersedes state law. Trump enforcing the laws of the United States is his job. Now, I think pot should be legalized, but if people want the law changed, then they need to lobby to have the law changed.
So, I want to say to everybody, especially the white people out there, listen, recognizing privilege doesn't make you an asshole, okay? That's not what this is about. This is not about that. Blame, making you an asshole. You're a terrible white person. That's not what this is about.
No, but broadly accusing people of wrongdoing, or wrong thinking, based on the color of their skin, does make you a racist, Doctor.
What this is about is hopefully making privilege visible, so you might become aware that many people do not have access to many of the things that you and I take for granted, and that in turn you might be willing to do something about it, and that we're not a threat, and that we don't need to take it personal.
If you hold me to account for things I have not done, or do not think, on the basis of something over which I have no control, Doctor, tell me, how am I not supposed to take that personally?
And that when we lift others up, we lift all ourselves up. And that's just how it goes. I'm a firm believer in that. So thanks for watching. This has been a special edition in Radical Therapist in Washington, D.C. Please subscribe. Please click like. Please comment. Please share with your friends, colleagues. And I'll have more content coming at you, no doubt. So thanks for watching. My name's Chris Hoff. Thanks for watching.
And thank you, Doctor. And I mean that sincerely. I do not agree with you on many things, and thus, I can imagine, you do not agree with me on many things. But the fact that, for the time being, we can have this kind of public discourse, that we can disagree civilly, and through this contrast of opinions, give other people the chance to make up their own minds. That exchange of ideas is the hallmark of our civilization. For as long as we are talking, we are not truly fighting. As always, thank you for watching.